And welcome everyone to another Stone Ridge Confab. I am accompanied today by some fine gentlemen here from Stone Ridge Software, Mr. Jesse Bucholz and also Mr. Marcus Haug. Gentlemen, do you want to give a quick introduction, kind of starting with you, Jesse?
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. My name is Jesse Bucholz. I'm on the pre-sales team here at Stone Ridge Software. My focus is more on the CE suite of applications, and I've been with Stone Ridge for just over 5 years now as of January. So pleasure to be here. I'm excited to go through the release wave 1 for 2024.
Right? We wait twice a year we get to go through this to actually look through these features in a bit more detail. I was going to say, Jesse, I'm super excited to kind of see kind of where CE landed with some of these new capabilities. On the F&O side, I'm going to be covering that today a little bit. Mr. Marcus, why don't you give an introduction as well, because I know you're going to be covering more of the BC workload, right, today?
Yep. So Marcus Haug, pre-sales as well, focusing on Business Central. So good to be with you today.
Yeah, so, all right, well, let's do some general housekeeping here to kind of get started. So, if you've never been on a Stone Ridge Confab before, really it's a bit different, as you can see, compared to a webinar. Really, the intent here is to be interactive, right? As you have questions, we are actually streaming on 3 different platforms. We do YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch. We've got a centralized chat, so as you have questions, feel free to go ahead and post them. In LinkedIn, they would be comments. On YouTube, they're going to be comments as well, or there's actually a chat bar that's there as part of that, and then on Twitch obviously there's chat as well. So if you have questions about the new features, feel free to pop them into the chat. Because what we want to do here today obviously is make this really interactive, and really just focus on some of the features that we feel are larger features. Obviously there's a ton of features that are added to the products with every single wave. We would not be able to cover all of the features in an hour. So what we try to do is obviously highlight and highlight the features and functions that we think are probably going to be impactful. Mind you, right, I get it. There are some times where we're not going to hit exactly what you want. So always check out the release notes no matter what. As you go through, obviously, those wave releases, it'll tell you all the great features that are in all the products. And like I said as well, we're going to focus really on the finance and operations platform. And when I say that, I'm going to focus on finance, supply chain, and proj ops. I know HR is there, but we'll just say HR doesn't have a lot of feature set that was added for this release, so you can check that out yourself. On BC, obviously, Marcus will cover that, and then on CE, Jesse has the fine privilege of going through and trying to tackle customer service, field service, sales, and marketing that are typically involved with that. We are looking at in the future here as well. Remember, at Stone Ridge, we don't just do Dynamics. We do Microsoft 365 as well as Azure-based services, and part of this release note cycle on Confab is that we want to start doing that as well on some of those other platform capabilities, because we actually use quite a bit of them, as you can imagine, from Power BI to Power Apps to Office to Outlook, you name it. All of these applications obviously are really coming together to be able to provide that ultimate experience when it comes to a business system application. So I guess with that, I've chatted too much here, Jesse, right? I want to get to the meat and potatoes. Let's go ahead and have you kick it off, Jesse. Let's go through some of the features, obviously, that have been added in the 2024 Wave 1 release notes for what we're looking at here, CE, right?
Absolutely. Yep. I'm assuming my screen's being shared.
It is. And look at those wonderful icons that are popping up.
Excellent. And as Scott had mentioned, I'm going to cover sales, marketing, or customer insights now, customer service and field service. A lot of times you can go in and you can enable these features to take advantage of some of the early previews that they have available before they go GA. As Marcus had mentioned, something similar with BC. I've gone in, I've done that in a test environment that I've got. You never want to do that in a production environment, but I've gone in and enabled that. Not a lot of these features are available to play with quite yet. So looking forward to that here in the coming months, but unfortunately, we're not able to get real hands-on with these. So we're going to be just kind of talking about them at a high level with some of the information that we know. As Scott had mentioned, definitely encourage you to go check out the release notes. I'm going to be highlighting 4 or 5 different updates that we're seeing come out per application here, but there are tens of if not hundreds of releases that are rolling out here across the board. So definitely encourage you to go check those out. We kind of cherry picked some of these, and there's a lot. So.
And I do want to add one thing real quick here, Jesse, to
Yeah.
that point, right? Because I think it's a really good call out. Like the release notes are typically published a couple months before the actual release occurs in either April or October. And Marcus and I were actually talking about it. Actually, we were all talking about it really high level before. It feels like a little bit too. It's like here's what we're saying we're going to release right on April. And product-wise, we're seeing some of that possibly roll, so to speak, where they're introducing those features not all exactly on April, but they're rolling in features then between April to October as part of that. So that's something to note as this, because I think what we're seeing here is that the major introduction, in the past we used to do that, and I think there's some learnings maybe that came through that, where when there's too much functionality that's introduced in one big pop, obviously there's no quality updates that can be then done very easily to address pointed larger application introduction functionality as part of that rollout. So like we see here, some of these are going to be blended. And then the final thing I wanted to mention, Jesse, we have talked about like taking this session and then waiting until after the release information comes out. They're high level, just so the audience kind of knows. What we don't want to do is we don't want to really show the preview capability, because there are changes between preview and GA that do occur.
Yeah,
and so like an example that would be Copilot. When we started playing with Copilot in customer service, it didn't have the setup tables that were involved, where you could actually define like what fields in customer service, for example, you wanted to come over for the case summary information that would occur. Had we shown the other functionality, people would have built out a mentality or ideology that it wasn't very good, maybe in some ways as well, because it is preview, as you can imagine. So just something to know. We've thought about actually doing like a follow-up session to this where we go into detail of these features. But, just take it for what it's worth. We want to make sure we're representing the GA stuff that's going to be coming out here. So go ahead, Jesse. Didn't mean to steal your thunder there. Just wanted the audience to kind of understand what's going on here.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a lot of good points in there. So this first one that I'm going to talk about here inside of sales is we're going to explore the sales application first. This is one that I've actually had requested in several of the more recent sales demos that I've done. We knew it was going to be coming out at some point. It's actually, this is something that we can take advantage of inside of Outlook today. But this feature is going to allow sellers to go in to Sales Copilot inside the Sales Hub, draft emails there, as well as update the tone, get summaries, get suggestions for the content of the email message. So today we can't leverage that inside of sales, but we can use it in in Outlook. So that's something that will be very welcoming to be able to use there as well. So looking forward to that one. The next feature here, really interesting. So Copilot's going to get its own home screen or own homepage inside of Dynamics 365 Sales. Today, typically when you log in, like for me anyway, first thing that you see is probably like a dashboard, right? Or maybe it's your opportunities page or your sales pipeline. But Copilot's going to have its own full-size home screen now when you first log in. So you're going to be able to interact with Copilot, get access to your pipeline, new records that maybe were assigned to you, account summaries, all kinds of stuff. So really curious to see what this looks like. I think it's going to be a big upgrade. I think a lot of sellers are going to enjoy having this one or having access to it. So look for that one coming out soon as well. This next one here is going to let sellers use Copilot when they're on opportunity records to get product recommendations. So a lot of times you're on an opportunity, you're building out a quote, you need to get some documentation pulled up around specific products. You're going to be able to get product specs, manuals, sales info that's related to those opportunities products pulled up through Copilot to use as part of that opportunity record. And then we got a couple updates for the Sales Accelerator. So notifying sellers when you've got a lead assignment rule, for example. So we get assignments. Maybe I went to a trade show and I had 100 new leads that came through, and I went and I've set up a rule. So maybe Scott's got a territory and Marcus has a territory and I have a territory. I dump those 100 leads in, they automatically filter to the correct seller. Today, there is not a notification process. I don't know that I've got a bunch of new leads that have been assigned to me. Maybe my manager sends me an email or something, hey, go and check this out. But now you're going to be able to set up these notification rules here so that I can make my team and even managers aware that new records have been assigned to them. So it'll be nice. Also, sequences. So a sequence in Sales Accelerator is a series of activities or assignments or interactions that you want to assign to a record. Maybe a seller needs to send an email, then they need to follow up with a phone call, for example. Today, you can only assign one sequence to a record, and now we're going to be able to assign multiple sequences to that same record. So, so that'll be a nice option to be able to assign multiple sequences. And last but not least, for sales here, a new feature that's going to allow sellers to leverage Copilot for sales inside of Microsoft Word. So we're going to be able to go into Word, use Copilot for sales, and access relevant Dynamics 365 data to help us prep documents there. So I think that's also a pretty big one as we talk, M365 you had mentioned before. We're a full, Microsoft shop here, not just Dynamics. So that's one of those options that, something that would be really cool to talk about or show off once we actually have access to it, once it's GA.
Yeah, one thing that's kind of interesting, I know the Sales Accelerator, like the notifications that you're mentioning, Jesse, I mean, we technically have the ability, right, maybe with Power Automate to send maybe some type of notification. This is like a native notification inside of Dynamics then, right, that you can set up those rules. Right. Is that kind of what that is? Okay, cool. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, not having to go in and build out some separate workflow just to take advantage of.
And that makes sense. I mean, Power Automate, you can do a lot with Power Automate for notifications, approvals. It isn't extremely complex, but compared to just going in and saying, hey, when this lead gets created for this person, send them a notification. I don't know, a table that you define that in can probably be a little bit easier than trying to go and create a Power Automate for it. So it's cool to see that usability perspective is being considered here. So that's awesome.
It's back to that low code, no code,
right?
Enabling just exactly a native feature to be able to handle that is going to be great.
Agreed.
All right. So we're going to move on. We're going to move on to marketing, aka customer insights journeys, as we go through our rebranding changes here. So send scheduling. This is going to give you the option when you're building out, a customer journey, for example, to go in and assign a specific time or a window as a part of that journey to push that message that, to help maximize your channel engagement. So rather than just pushing it out as soon as somebody comes in a journey, you got different triggers or segments that helps kickstart that journey. You're going to be able to assign a specific time for that message to go out to a customer. So I think that'll be a big one. Vanity links. So you're going to be able to go in. A lot of times when you send out, depending on the channel, an email, you've got a form or a text message, you've got this long URL that just kind of looks clunky. Today, we leverage this a lot in a Outlook, where we're going to go in, you can right click on a link on a URL and change it to a short name, right, to help brand it. You're going to be able to do that inside of your marketing channels now, inside of customer insights as well. I think that'll be a big one. This next one here, so send personalized messages based on website interactions. You're going to be able to generate tracking scripts, embed those into your website, and then send personalized messages based on that behavior or interaction that your customer takes with your website. So let's say they go and they look at a product on your website. That might trigger an email that gets sent out back to them. So I think that'll be a big one, good for marketing teams. And finally, lead qualification criteria. So you're going to be able to go in and leverage fit, intent, recency, and engagement data, and then go in and set an action for when they've reached a specific threshold that you define. That might update a lead to an MQL, or maybe you want to go in and update that lead's sales stage. So this ties in more to the lead scoring model feature inside of Customer Insights, but just more functionality available around that lead record.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to start getting used to calling it Customer Insights instead of marketing, right? So
absolutely,
shame on me.
That's a tough sell. That's a tough sell.
Right.
It's too used to it. So up next, we're going to look at customer service. This first Copilot feature, this is going to help agents by allowing filtering on knowledge-based content. So depending on the line of business that agent maybe is working in, this is going to allow you to go in and find the most relevant knowledge content when an agent is working on a case. So there's going to be some different filtering criteria. I saw a couple screenshots of this one, and this is really going to benefit companies with multiple lines of business or a really large knowledge-based library to help filter out some of that knowledge or some of those knowledge articles to help them resolve cases. This next one here, I'm really curious about. I want to see how this is going to work out here.
Oh, this is awesome. Okay.
Soon you're going to be able to enable a voice message to convert to a case. So not a lot of detail on it yet, but found it very interesting.
Well, I mean, it would make sense. They added the voicemail capability, right, just recently to basically relay to an agent, if I remember correctly, on the last Wave release. I would guess, like, Jesse, this is why Copilot and some of those generative AI concepts are becoming just so much more powerful. Leave a voicemail, have it just, we've seen it in Teams, right? Like when we do any of our transcription or even voicemail transcription, take that, put it to a LLM, hey, do I need to create a case or not for this based upon the customer input? Yeah, we need to do something, create a case. Like that's really cool to hear.
Yeah,
So,
and then, right now we've got that conversation intelligence capability where we're going in, we can transcribe conversations, pull sentiment analysis, enable suggestions based on a conversation. So it makes sense, right? This is something that should work out, but might be some bugs to work out up front, I'm sure.
We'll have to see. Anything new, it's always going to have something with it, but it's definitely going down the right path here. That's cool to hear.
Next one here. So we got some omni-channel dialer updates that are going to be available to us rolling out as part of Wave here. So transferring external numbers is supposed to get easier now. Right now it's several clicks to step through to get to the point where an agent can transfer to an external number. Supposedly it's going to be one step, one click here. We're going to be able to transfer that. You're also going to be able to transfer calls to Microsoft Teams users through VoIP. So that'll be a new enhancement. And then finally, there's going to be some search capabilities inside the dialer where you can actually go in and search for accounts and contacts within that dialer window as well. And lastly, a feature, this one has actually been in preview since last year. So I've seen it in environments where I've enabled the early updates, but there's a case volume forecasting dashboard that's going to help you go in and predict upcoming case volumes. And this is something that's in 15-minute increments, and you can actually push it out up to 6 months. So that's those customer service managers that want to predict volume going forward to understand maybe scheduling or staffing concerns that they might have. This is something that's going to help them manage some of that workflow as well.
Did they mention, Jesse, was that like time series? Did they say? Do you remember what was on there? I'll have to take a look at that because
I don't recall, but
okay, yep.
But I can pull it up. I've got it enabled in one of my environments. It's got some good demo data in it, so something we can definitely pull up and take a look at. But yeah, I don't recall.
Okay, good to know. Because the time series stuff, I can just see that. Like the same stuff for demand planning they used for cash flow. They used it on BC as well, right, Marcus, for the demand planning. I could see them using the same time series regression basically for cases, because then you've got historical case volume that you use just like a MRP run or a demand planning run, and boom, you can at least get some metrics as to when you're expecting to have those spikes. So that's interesting here.
But even like off-hour staffing,
right?
Proactive, alerting people that we anticipate something. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Let's see. So the last application I'm going to cover today is going to be field service. And this first feature here, it feels like it's going to be very similar to how we're leveraging our own environment at Stoneridge, where we go and we'll copy a link to a record inside Dynamics, paste it into a Teams chat, and you get that card view. Now you're supposed to be able to get this same experience for field service when we're copying a record back to a work order. So I'm interested to see this one go through, but I think that, we can understand what the expectation might be here too, that, you're going to be able to go in and modify what that card looks like too, as far as what data you want to surface there in the card view. So should have some control over that as well once it rolls out. This next one here, I'm probably the most excited about. And Marcus, I'm not sure if you are as well. I would imagine.
Yeah,
but
I'm gonna talk about it too.
Yeah, awesome.
And I don't have a whole lot of detail on it. Maybe Marcus ends up with more detail. But today we've got a native integration with Business Central through sales, right? So this is going to be very welcoming. We've had a lot of opportunities that have come up in the past where clients are looking for Business Central and Field Service, and we didn't have that native integration stood up. So now we're going to have access to an out-of-the-box integration between the two. This could be really huge. I'm super excited for it. I think the team is going to be as well. So can't wait for this one to roll out and get our hands on it. Up next, so offline sync options, mobile. So mobile users, if you've got that Field Service mobile application, you're going to be able to go in and update your sync interval settings right from your mobile application. So how frequently do you want your data synced from your mobile device if you're in offline mode, which, you know, that's something that a lot of clients want to take advantage of. But you're also going to be able to go in and determine if you want that data to download over Wi-Fi, over cellular, or both to help sync up that data. So if you're consuming a lot of data on your mobile devices, you're going to have some more options there as well with the frequency and how you sync your data. This new mobile app experience, so this is something we've actually talked about for well over a year, I think now. So we had some insight to this quite a while ago, and it's actually been in preview since August of last year. But it is planned to now be GA in June as part of the Wave 1 2024 release. So a lot of new enhanced features that are going to be rolling out as part of it. It's completely updated refresh of the mobile app. It looks great. It looks fantastic. Very modern, very user friendly. So I'm really happy they're rolling this one out. I've been able to test it, the preview of it at least anyway, and I do really like it. So can't wait for this one to be GA.
That's awesome.
Lastly, for Field Service, the schedule board is going to get a new look. So Microsoft says that it is quote unquote future proof, saying that the architecture is going to be up to date and with the latest advances in web technology, which we actually had a schedule board refresh, a year or so ago?
Yeah, it was like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, right? That they had the new look that was available for it. Yep.
And I liked it. I like the current look. So I'm really excited to see, or curious at least anyway, how much it's going to change. But I have no doubt it's going to be a nice, welcoming upgrade when it comes through. So I'm excited to see that one. And that's all I have for Field Service today. I think I captured everything in 15 minutes exactly. It was 11:11, I think, when I started. So
you did awesome, Jesse. I mean, there's a lot of features that are in there. I mean, the big thing here is that obviously there's a lot now when it comes to Copilot that's being integrated, right? And that's one of those areas that, you know, candidly, we just didn't know how deep it was going to go as they're building out the infrastructure. Now that we know more about it, it's looking pretty dang cool is what it boils down to. We've got some comments in here real quick as well. So Leah, great stuff coming in CE. Looking forward to taking advantage of some of these. Yeah, Leah, I know we use the customer insights internally, right? So that'll be some nice features that we'll get some wins off of there as well. And hopefully our clients as well that are watching this will be excited about that. And then another person in the LinkedIn, it's not saying the user, but I am already reaching out to clients who will be sure to want to look into the voicemail to case feature. That's awesome. There's just, once again, like, I don't think people understand, like, we're going through different concepts, like in even our company meeting, we're going through a lot of the Copilot enablement just to kind of present that to people and what Copilot is and the details of it, so to speak. But what's really interesting about it is that you can design some really automated tasks now where you can take language and automate it. You can provide descriptions to data. Like some of the concepts I was dreaming of last night, this is how weird I am. I was thinking through, like, basically you can create Canvas apps that you can embed inside of finance and operations, and the Canvas apps you can put Copilot in it, and you can pass the record information from finance and operations to that app, which allows me then to use Power Automate to take that data and send it to a large language model that allows me to create a text-based description or representation then with maybe even setup, like saying, like, when I send this to a large language model, I want you to consider these fields. I want you to consider the forecast, the percentage of revenue that this customer has for us, the percentage of revenue this order has for us. Like, you can do some crazy things like that, and it'll come back and say things like, this customer is a critical customer because they have 25% of your revenue. You have not contacted them as of this date. You should probably take an action around that. And just think, like, you could actually if you can think of questions that you could ask of data, imagine in your process that you could automate those questions so that when you're looking at that list, those questions are being used to analyze data that's in that set that you send with it. So I just want to implore to people, like, there's just, and this is not fake stuff, this is real stuff. The accuracy is the question that we're all asking, and we're starting to see more and more accurate results, obviously, here as time goes on. So it's going to be quite a bit of fun here, I guess, is the way, maybe a short way to say it, right? All right, Marcus.
Scott.
Yeah.
Scott, I have very different dreams than you do.
Yeah,
That's
right.
not typically what I do. So, I can't imagine this is a one-off for you. So I'm hoping that you have a notebook, pen and paper, or a laptop. You record those ideas right away when you get up, because
Right.
I'm sure they're fantastic. This, again, I know this is not a one-off for you. So
Yeah, I don't know about that. We'll see, right? So, all right, let's keep rolling here. I took up too much time there, Mr. Marcus. I know you want to get into the BC stuff. What we got?
All right, so I'm gonna hit these kind of fast. So Power Platform. So there's a series of updates connected to the Power Platform, which I think are really a big deal. Improve the approval process. So if you've worked with approvals inside of Business Central, you have approval users inside of Business Central. We could do approvals inside of Power Automate. They're bridging this gap now. So approval users that are set up inside of BC can be part of the approval chain in Power Automate for approvals, which to me is that's been lacking, because you can leverage then the setup that's inside of BC. It doesn't feel quite so separated. If you haven't looked at Power Automate with BC, a lot of just really nice enhancements across there, a lot of new templates that are available too, which is just awesome. Virtual tables, I can't say enough about virtual tables. I've been messing with them again today. I was looking at them yesterday. You want to build Power Apps, virtual tables, you can do all the searches, the lookups, the instantaneous right back on the Power App updates BC. They cleaned up all the glitches that you maybe have experienced in the past using virtual tables. They put some new apps that come with it now to even enhance the setup. So you used to have to go sort of back to the table directly inside of the Dataverse to enable linking, and you don't have to do any of that right now. So a lot of nice enhancements with virtual tables. There's a field service, Jesse. It's really an invoice concept. So we're going to take the work order, we're going to invoice it over to BC. Kind of basic at this point, which is fine. It's a good starting point. I think what we see, though, is that it's laying a foundation for the integration. So like we saw with sales, the ability to enhance, ability to add on additional functionality with a base integration, that's what we're getting with field service. So I think that's the big takeaway right now. When we were at Directions, Microsoft is committed to continue to build this integration. So they see it's needed. They're going to continue to enhance it. So application stuff, I just wanted to just highlight a couple things. First time in a while, we've seen quite a few enhancements to both the service area and what we're now calling projects.
Oh, really?
Archive assembled a project, being able to put some location information at the task level, be able to define service posting policies around users, some enhancements there. So nice to see that we're enhancing in those areas. So there's the default location, some changes around timesheets, again, some usability things that they're doing with service and projects regarding data lookups, some things with fact boxes. So just some enhancements in those areas, which have been, I think, long overdue. Some new Excel layouts. So if you haven't looked at Excel layout reports, I did a blog and a webinar maybe a year ago on this. Check it out. It's really a nice way to do some more customized reporting out of BC. So instead of trying to modify the report layouts, you can actually get the data set in Excel and use Excel reports to do that. So 35 more reports are being added to that list of reports that are already available. Here, finally, way overdue. Jobs. Terminology change. Jobs is out, projects is in. So we're just going to see a label change everywhere, which, again, no one knows what a job was. Everyone wants to call it project, so that's great.
That's a good, like you said, that's a good one. I agree.
Yeah. Copilot. So we're going to see this throughout. So bank reconciliation faster with Copilot. It's kind of I don't know, maybe it's an odd place to start in some ways, but yet it's actually some nice functionality. So if you're an organization that deals with bank recs, a lot of bank accounts, just the sort of the tedious nature of it, I think that's what you're seeing with Copilot is the ability to automate something that is a rather tedious, can sometimes be a time-consuming task. So it's there. It's great. Product information, we've seen that. Microsoft has made some tweaks with that. Next one, though, sales lines. So like Jesse, you talked about in the sales app, being able to use Copilot around entering sales lines. That's what's coming here. So to be able to get line suggestions. So, maybe add on products, add on services, all that sort of stuff coming in the sales order module. Extending Copilot. So Copilot, the ability to use the development environment to extend and add Copilot functionality into BC is coming. This might be the biggest Copilot release of this wave. The other stuff is kind of nice, but if you got developers, you can do development work, you've got some ideas on using Copilot in BC, you're gonna be able to do that, which I think is great.
Yeah, and just to add real quick, Marcus, so Cameron just made a comment. She's basically the BCFS integration sounds interesting, right? And I'd agree, right? That's one of those where, like, we've talked about field service, you could implement with Business Central, and if you know how to implement it, meaning take field service, segregate inventory, for example, and then from there have BC as your financial backend with it. Like, I could see a Marcus kind of tackling what we did initially in the first iteration of the sales connector, which is when an invoice comes through, it changes it to a GL account that represents the product along with the dimensions that are related to it.
That's what it does now.
Right? That's what I figured as well. It's a great way to start the conversation. But like you said with the Copilot too, like, so all of the first party Copilot enablement inside of Dynamics, at least on the F&O and CE platforms, are going through Copilot Studio. And I'm really hoping the Business Central team, they're going to make an integrated one because it's an SMB solution, and I understand that, but I hope that they think about how do we extend Copilot when it becomes the pain inside of Business Central, because we're going to start seeing that probably pretty soon too.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Copilot with analysis tabs, kind of cool. Power Automate, Copilot integrated with BC. So if you're doing Power Automate stuff, I can't say enough about Power Automate in BC. The last two releases, Microsoft has made some, I think, great advancements around Power Automate. The ability to connect very easily with BC data. You don't need to even do the virtual tables. You can connect directly. Nice enhancements, alerts, all that sort of stuff, which is pretty cool. And then just a whole series of other updates. All of these different areas are being enhanced with BC. The one that I do want to point out, though, is under the country and regional update, it's sort of buried, is this 1099 submission update. So finally dealing with the 1099 thing, you don't have to print on pre-printed forms. You can automate the submission process. So again, a nice usability for the finance people out there. It's not sexy, but it's extremely functional. It'd be a big time saver too. So
right.
Those are the areas I wanted to hit, Scott.
Those are really good. Like, first off, I just want to make sure I tried to be neutral with it. Cameron, I apologize. Right? So I think I started with and I was like, okay. But anyways, one of the team members pinged me in the background. Thank you, Carl, for letting me know. Marcus, like you said, like the Copilot introduction here, we're just seeing the start of it, right? I mean, this is like, people are starting to now understand what they can do with it. The infrastructure is being built out. It's being added to licensing, for example. Like, this is the initial release, really, of the generative AI on most of the platforms. In Business Central, they're having the tooling and some of the enablement around it, but you didn't see the pain pop out on it yet, right? So there's still potentially, and what I mean by the pane is that when you click on Copilot and all the other apps, there's usually a side right pane that pops out. I was curious, do we have that yet inside of the new updates yet?
Well, when you do like a bank rec, you do get a pop out that runs.
Okay.
I don't think this is exactly what you're talking about yet, but it's generating. And this is the only one I can get because the other ones aren't released yet. But there's your bank rec, so you can take or leave it. Yeah. Not exactly the same, it's doing the AI stuff behind the scenes and coming into this page. So yeah, it's not exactly, I think, what you're looking for there yet.
Okay. Well, they're getting there. Like I said, the point here is that we want to make sure people understand really kind of those differences too as we go through this, right? So we're going to keep on tracking that, obviously, and just make sure that we've got really the alignment here for everything. Well, thank you, Marcus, for that. That's awesome. We're seeing a lot of great features coming in there. I want to go ahead and flip over here as you see me going back and forth trying to get my screen all laid out. So we're going to go ahead and flip over and let me, of course, you know how it works, Marcus? Like every time that we do a screen share, I've got to resize things. So let me just get this updated for everyone just really quick on stream here. And then let's dive in. Okay, so let's go through the finance and operations capabilities that we're looking at here inside, obviously, of the environment. So I've got a couple that we're going to be able to go through. I might be able to crack some of these open as well in one of the preview environments that I have. But let's go through at least at a high level to talk about kind of those new features that have been added to the solution. So I always like to start at the cross-platform perspective here. So cross-platform, if you don't know what that means, basically high level, finance and operations is a platform, right? And then on the platform, we then enable finance workloads, supply chain workloads, whatever those different workloads are. So cross-platform means on the finance and operations platform, these are the features that have been added to it that all of these applications that exist on it can use. So a couple really good ones here. So first off, dual write, we get the asynchronous merge capability. You know, this sounds small, but it's actually pretty impactful when it comes to performance. What I mean by that is that if you update a customer right now in live mode, for example, what happens is it's actually going through and connecting between the two systems and then doing that update. As you can imagine, if you've got lots of updates that are occurring, well, that could be a performance scenario, right, that you've got to consider with it. With a synchronous merge, what that means is you can do the update, go do something else, and move off of that record, and then the dual write framework is going to do that update then inside of F&O or vice versa as part of that. So this is a really nice feature that should help with some of those scalable scenarios. And quite candidly, like asynchronous concepts just have typically a better user experience in terms of data entry. The frustration with asynchronous is typically I do it and I want to report immediately and it's not there for a couple seconds, for example. Those are the things that you just need to kind of understand. But from a design pattern, asynchronous is typically, in my opinion, a little bit better. Dataverse integration, kind of like with you, Marcus, like they're just doing tons of updates to the virtual entity performance. So you were saying that on the Business Central side, like I don't know if people really understand. I keep on saying game changing, but just the thought of, you know, when I was in Business Central, and that's all I did for 10 years at the beginning of my life, it was fantastic because I was able to dig into the solution, write code, and make all this cool functionality, but it was always inside of Business Central. And the pain point I always had with that was if I wanted to make it more portable, where I could use it inside of a different system or even monetize or sell, for example, another feature that didn't require Business Central, like a demand planning solution, I would have to basically have them buy Business Central. Well, if you think about the virtual entity integration, you can start designing applications now, like the Business Central team as an example. Instead of doing your code inside of Business Central, you could create a Power App. That Power App could then have virtual entities that reflect the data, and when you do updates to it inside of that app, it can go update it then inside of Business Central. So you could create, like if you had a whole new functional area that you wanted to create, you now have the option theoretically to choose between whether or not you want to do that natively inside of Business Central or inside of Dataverse, for example. So just something to consider here is that, you know, I've been doing a lot of the new apps that are being introduced on F&O, for example, they're all Dataverse apps. They're model-driven apps that access the F&O data, even though it's in a separated environment in terms of the database backend for it. So this is going to continue to obviously pick up steam. And like I said, you just need to start thinking a little bit differently now on how you design solutions. The Copilot one is another example where you can take a Power App, build it in Dataverse, pass, for example, the record to that Power App by using the Add App capability in your personalization settings. And then from there, you can actually have it connect to the F&O database, that Power App, as a connection inside of it to grab that record and any additional details. And then you've got control to do things like build and automate that goes to an LLM or any of those other types of scenarios where you want to then extend, for example, maybe some generative capabilities. So there's just a lot of new capabilities capabilities that you can think through as part of that. From a finance feature, so now we're going specifically to Dynamics 365 Finance. So if you just had finance, these are the features that you'd be looking at. So one of these that is just really cool is this tackle tasks and reports with generative AI. So you can now go into the Copilot pane inside of F&O and basically set up security, or you can search for reports inside of F&O by using Copilot. And you can also create new report visuals by using Copilot. And I've got a screenshot here, and this is what I'm talking about, right?
That's amazing.
Right? Like it's something so small and simple in some ways, but it just becomes so powerful, as you can imagine here. So remember, some of the Copilot stuff that they're adding, this actually from a Power BI perspective is a Power BI first-party capability. And so now if we're able to use Power BI, which is our back end, to do our reporting, well, we would be able to use Copilot then potentially to basically go through and add and create additional charts and graphs in the edit mode as part of this. So there's just, it says on here, I think it's what does it say? Projects over budget, and boom, it just shows you all of the projects that are over budget inside of here. So once again, these ideas are starting to come to fruition now, and we're starting to see them introduced into there. Right, Carrie? I agree. Jody as well. These are some pretty cool features that they may start in F&O, but I can guarantee they're going to be everywhere before you know it. Other finance features that have been added. So part of some of the new capabilities here are, so from a report, there's this capability called detect data changes, where we can take snapshots of reports, and then we can use AI now in F&O to analyze those differences, to even create notifications and then alerts on those differences. So this is a really cool feature. I don't know if it's going to be extended to all reports. I think this initially is more on the FP&A, the financial planning tool as part of it, but it's going to start rolling out even further, where imagine like in financial reports, you run a report on 12/31/2016, and then you run a report on 1/31/2016. Show me the differences with it. And another one I was thinking through was, I had questions recently, like on an auditor workbench, how awesome would it be to have, number one, you could give your auditor a team member license, you could have a workspace that's the auditor workspace, and then you could actually have it where when they click on that report, for example, that you may have supplied, like you could drop files there for them to interact with using attachments. Well, what you could do is you could actually have it where that auditor could rerun the report and then use AI to compare the one that you initially created for that auditor versus what the auditor is going to test and validate with to make sure it's okay. And the AI feature could say, hey, that's exactly the same. There's no differences between the reports. Or it could even say that there's a difference with them. So we're getting into some, like I said, some automation that could be a lot easier here in the future.
So speaking from a finance perspective, Scott, I always put my auditor in the closet with no air conditioning and a lot of paper. So.
Get them out faster, right? Yeah, I can totally understand that. So yeah. So poor auditors, I feel for them, right? All right. The other things that are kind of cool here, what if scenario. So budget integration with Copilot. Hey, Kevin just said, "Wow, Marcus, you better watch out. You're gonna have to watch out for that." So the other thing is the what if scenarios, the budget integration, obviously with Copilot. So they're starting to get more, obviously, where we can ask Copilot then different scenarios that can occur, and obviously have that display or tell us some of those details that are related to it. So other ones I want to kind of highlight here just really quickly, the collections coordinator. So this is a really cool feature that actually is already in the software solution as well. So inside of our demonstration environments that we have, we're starting to see where we've got the ability to actually access some of these new workspaces, right? So the collections coordinator is one of those, and what it allows us to do is really drill into the collections activity information, and then it can provide some summary information and some actions that can occur off it as well. So that's a really cool feature, and maybe I'll be able to pop it up here in a second. There's a new vendor invoice center that's been added as well, that allows basically for us to see all the different types of pending vendor invoices that are out there, which is really kind of nice. Just kind of unifying that view, so to speak, as part of it. We've got some enhancements for the financial tags. So if you don't know, we have financial dimensions that allow us to basically take, and when we post to the general ledger, take that detail and report off of it in some way, shape, or form. Examples would be like, I want to see all product groups on the P&L. Well, we use dimensions to tackle that. But what they also added was the ability to use what are called financial tags. And tags aren't a financial perspective. They're just like a reporting perspective, right, with it, where I may not want this to break out my general ledger and P&L, my cost centers, and all that department hierarchy with it, but I just want to be able to tag a record with some attributes that I can use from a reporting perspective. So that's a nice feature as well. And then finally, receipt matching with Copilot. So why did this receipt not match properly? Let's ask Copilot. Let's have Copilot do all the work to figure it all out. So they're adding more from the visibility of data and interaction of data, which is a really good place for a large language model. And I'm going to show this just really quickly here because I do have it inside of preview here. So this is an example then of the collections workspace that we have, the collections coordinator. And what's really cool about this is I can come in, I can go through and select, for example, Cave Wholesales that's inside of here. It's going to go find, for example, all of my interactions with the customer from a timeline perspective. It's going to show my balance information that's inside of here. And what happens in the background is that there's actually a little tab inside of here that gets updated. As you can see, that is the generative AI based capability. So Cave Wholesales is an important contributor with 100% contribution to our revenue. So obviously they're pretty critical in this demo environment. Their last payment was received on 5/19, indicating a lack of consistency on on-time payments, because we are already in 2024, so it's saying, hey, they're a little bit behind on payments here. So what's cool about this is that it's providing visibility into other areas from basically what you set up to look at for those attributes, and this can absolutely be extended as well. I know Carl on our team is actually looking more into how to extend Copilot, but what you can also do then is like create a reminder email. I'm like, yep, just go ahead and make it easy peasy for me. And so I'll wait for here real quick in the background because the app popped up and closed. So we'll try it again just really quickly here. Oh, of course, it's crashing. So my Outlook, I've got the trial version, or not the trial, the what do they call it? The beta versions that are installed. But the nice thing about this then is it actually goes through and then displays that content then that you want to be able to then generate some of those reminder emails. And so, and actually it did pop up here in the background. Let me go ahead and see if I can dismiss this, bring it over just so you can see real quick. Dear employee name. There's a whole funny story about this. So I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to inform you of 2 outstanding invoices with the balance of 147. We kindly request that you make payment as soon as possible to avoid late charges. Right? So depending upon who is on here in terms of the collections person or individual inside of here. So if I go to like Owl or Sparrow and we do a very similar thing inside of here, whoever is set up as that collection contact, then when I create that reminder email inside of here is actually the one that gets that collection event, right? So you can have this then update to then support, right? In this situation, it doesn't say employee name, it says Tom, so it filled it in based upon the data setup I have inside of the environment. So a really cool feature, like I said, makes it a little bit easier to kind of get your work done, and obviously just makes it hopefully your life a little bit simpler, right? So let's keep rolling here. Other areas, so this is the receipt matching I just wanted to highlight. So just like Marcus was showing kind of in the BC side of it, on here, if you go up, for example, to your top and see suggested resolutions, this is the vendor invoices where we've got auto receipt match errors, which is actually one of those tiles that are inside of F&O, inside of our AP automation based capability. Well, what's happening here is it failed somehow, and what you can do is you can highlight it and you say, hey, what should I do to fix this? And it'll tell you what the error was and how to actually go through and then fix it by using Copilot. So really cool. If you think about it, it's looking at all the rules and really just oversimplifying, I think, in a lot of ways, what you should be doing to correct it without you having to click into the record to go through and correct that action. So, like I said, these concepts for large language models, they're fantastic. They just make it easier to take data and then help you get to the core of it. And then the vendor invoice center, I just wanted to show, like, how do we have for manual invoices, what are pending? There's going to be some analytics that are inside of here as well. So really a nice feature that we're looking forward to there. Other finance features, so this is one that BC has had for a while, prepayment sales invoices, really kind of nice. We can now generate, we could always take prepayment inside of F&O very easily. We could do pro forma invoices as well. Prepayment sales invoices generate that invoice value that we can apply cash or settle cash against inside of finance. And then the other one that's really cool here that we've talked about so many times with so many different customers that we now have native functionality around is this concept about customer and vendor balance netting. Well, what's that mean? Well, what I can do is if I have the same party record, so we, in our global address book, we call an individual in the global address book a party record, and a party record can associate with an employee. In BC, it's very similar to a contact that can relate to a bank account, a customer, a vendor, same concept. We call it a party record. Well, the customer vendor net balancing allows for us basically to go through and set up an agreement. And with that agreement, when we actually have open customer and vendor transactions, we can net them together based off of that agreement so that if we have, for example, a receivable for that customer and then we have a payable that's larger, well, we could take a portion of that receivable and apply it to the payable so we're not paying cash, for example, for that customer because they're the same entity. So what's awesome about this is that you can set up, for example, a journal-based concept with it so you can identify what those invoices are and what those customers are, and you can then post those, and it will then post it into the general ledger, and you have a balance and netting history that you can access, along with some netting advice that you can then send to the vendor customer, right, to say, hey, we took your payable here and we applied it to the receivable, or however direction you go with that, right? So, and finally, you can also set it up to be automated. So that way, periodically, when you run a process, it'll actually go through and then net those together for you and then provide that remittance advice as part of that. So this comes into play once again where you're probably going to want to do netting, for example, before you do a pay run, right? Because in that situation, then it would then reduce the value of the payable potentially that you have by doing that netting agreement as part of that process. I always thought about it from the angle of, well, we want to do it from a payment journal perspective. I really love that they've decided to actually make it a full area where you can actually do setup that's related to it to drive it. So really nice feature. Now moving on to supply chain really quickly. So Copilot integration with demand planning. So because we have the new demand planning application that's in preview as well now that's going live, using Copilot to ask about data is a really cool feature, right? So we're going to have that's going to be inside of F&O as well, where we can ask about the demand plan, some comparison capabilities as well. And then what we can also do is use this procure to pay dashboard to do some decisions with Copilot. And that's also another one I have inside of here as well. So if you haven't seen the Copilot inside of F&O, you can see here it is. It's coming in here. We're going to have it. It's going to be awesome. It's part of that license as well. What I can do though on the supply chain side is that there's this workspace called Confirm Purchase Orders with Changes that's now exposed. And what this allows me to do now is if I drill into it, is it's going to allow me basically to go through and then see if a purchase order is updated or changed or modified, what is the impact then of all the subsequent orders that are pegged against that? So as you can see here, I've got a high impact change, and if I click on show here, we can see purchase order 16 had item number M0014 update where the quantity changed from 1,163 to 1,087. And obviously I could go back here and use the database log to see who changed it, or maybe I even have line events that are enabled. But on the far right here, I can then see all of the production orders that are potentially affected by that quantity change, along with the Kanbans in here and even safety stock that's being impacted with it. So this, like I said, is another one of those where it's like, this makes so much more sense, right? In terms of how are we going to basically use Copilot to automate or assist our job. Well, all you do is you set up a little thing that goes to a large language model that has basically this order is related to all these orders. Is it going to impact it? And it'll come back with some of those great capabilities. So, and Mike had on here, netting is very exciting. I agree, Mike, that it's going to be great. And then Sam, these features alongside with Copilot is music to the finance department as well as the operations of clients. Much better collaboration and true 360 visibility for the bombs. Absolutely, right? Just a lot of great capabilities that are being added there. So I kept this because we're going to publish the slides so you'll be able to see it, but you can see here very similar in terms of the procure to pay, the text description that's here, and then their email reminder that we can create. And then finally, I have the vendor invoice center inside of here as well. The other supply chain features that I just want to go through just really quickly here. So obviously quality management on goods in transit. So with landed cost, we have had the goods in transit feature, I believe, since even release, where remember when we have a container or a vessel and we take it, we've got to basically reflect that on the balance sheet. Well, goods in transit is typically what that is classified as. Well, now we can actually generate quality orders using the quality associations by using the reference type of the goods in transit. So that'll be a nice feature as well. Inventory visibility is another one that's inside of here as well that we're starting to see. So this one, really kind of exciting. So the inventory visibility add-on, and I'll open it up in the background here as we're kind of talking through this. The benefit of the inventory visibility is that it allows for us to have like a layer above F&O that we can use other applications then to query balance information about inventory. So it's kind of disconnected from F&O, so to speak, and then you can use all these different types of features or applications to access that information. Well, what they're doing is they're really going through and doing some updates to it to make sure that it then has the ability to deal with scale. Another one, which was a big issue that we've had at other client sites, and I'm sure the team is going to love to hear this. We now, beyond just having that 180-day integration to be able to forecast inventory in the future for ATP calculations, we also now have the ability to basically see visibility and allocation across the inventory without specifying a specific site or warehouse. So this is a really nice feature for scenarios where you want to allocate the inventory at some level, but you don't care about what site or warehouse it's being fulfilled from at that moment. And the customer, typically on a web commerce experience, you're not going to tell them all the warehouses that you have that have the inventory, make them select it, right? So that's going to be a really nice feature to have from a visibility perspective as well. And then finally, kind of the last things I just wanted to mention, one of the features that we've been talking about quite often here is the fact that you can implement just supply chain, or you can implement just finance, or you can implement just HR. Well, now you can implement just WMS as well. So they worked really hard on basically making a WMS only mode where basically you can have master data that's being supplied by other ERP systems that then jumps into Dynamics 365 Warehouse, which should be interesting. I don't know if we're going to have a separate app for that in the future, but then that allows us to do our warehouse planning, our receiving and putaways, our outbound waves, and then our shipments as part of that process. So this is going to be kind of interesting to see as we look at these services that we segregated, because remember, AX 2012 R3 had some of these features that we're talking about, but what they've done is they said finance and supply chain are separate SKUs or separate products on the finance and operations platform. My expectation is that they're going to make more and more of these in the future as well. So this is a welcome change for a lot of companies that already have maybe some financial backend, but want to really harness the power then of Dynamics by using then the supply chain capabilities. So one final thing here then, let's just go through project operations. There's some nice things that are in here. So the insight generator for status reports. So this is using Copilot and some of the generative AI capabilities. So on a status report that's generated inside of Dynamics now, just like inside of Power BI where you can say, get insights for it, we're going to have a very similar capability then on the project operations side here for insights on status reports. We've got some updates then for what we call the non-stock resource-based scenarios. So remember, there are 3 different modes really for the project operations. One purely exists inside of F&O. One exists between finance and operations and CE or Dataverse, and then one is entirely inside of Dataverse. So these features right here are actually features that are inside of the full F&O based solution, but as they've been adding more and more to the Dataverse side of it, they are now adding some of these capabilities on the front end. So what this means is that I can do progress billing for non-stock and resource-based scenarios now where I couldn't before, and then in the create forecast from budget, that's also for the non-stop resource scenarios. And then finally, there is this new feature where the contract value can be editable. Used to be that value, if I remember correctly, was calculated based upon the invoiced milestones. And if you have rev rec scenarios where your contracted value is different than your invoiced milestones, well, you may want to then have the system rev rec it according to that contract value or contracted value. So that's something to note here, is it now supports that feature inside of project operations. And then finally, we're going to have a brand new expense mobile app, right? So we have deprecated the apps inside of F&O at this point. So if you just see this really quickly on the top, we have this mobile app capability. That's going away. So eventually, we're going to have each of those apps that are inside of there as separate power apps, and the expense management was there for it. And then just really quickly here, I did want to show the on-hand inventory. So as you can see here, I have one set up where I've got inventory on hand and summary information that's coming from F&O inside of here. And you can see we've got quantities that are inside of here that we can access, along with even the preloaded inventory that shows basically all the different locations and quantities that we have for it. And then finally, from a feature management perspective, we were talking about that 180 days. Well, on the available to promise feature here, as you can see, we now have the ability to preload for 180 days then that is going to be then inside of there for that inventory visibility. So once again, this is just to kind of open your eyes to say, hey, F&O, it's not just F&O apps now. We're dealing with F&O and also Dataverse apps as we go through these processes. So yeah, that was a lot to get through in a short amount of time. We had some really good feedback from the audience in the background here as well. Yeah, Marcus, Jesse, exciting, huh? We're getting some more. It looks pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
it'll be fun to get our hands on and actually play with some of these new features too.
right, agreed. All right, well, we're a couple minutes over. Let's go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. We always love having you on here. It's great to hear the feedback as well, what people are excited about. Moving forward here, obviously, not next week, but the week after, we're going to actually pick up as well with another confab. So just check our site for the content and what we're going to be covering. Until then, make sure to have a fantastic rest of your day and have a fantastic weekend. And yeah, we'll see you 2 weeks from now. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Bye.
Have a good one.